So you're thinking about diving into a kitchen or bathroom reno, huh? Good for you.
It's exciting.
It is. But picking out a new faucet is really just the tip of the iceberg. We're talking about rooms that need to work as hard as you do.
That's where this deep dive comes in. We'll be going over must-knows.
We're talking NKBA guidelines.
And real-world advice from the design build pros.
We'll cover the sneaky little details that can really make or break a project and help you design a space that's functional.
And fabulous.
Exactly.
What I think is so fascinating about these sources is that they go way beyond the rules. It's not just do this, don't do that.
Right.
They emphasize the why behind the guidelines.
I like that.
Yeah, the NKBA gives you specific measurements.
Mm.
But if you really understand the reasoning behind them,
That's what's so helpful.
yeah, that's what empowers you to make decisions, informed decisions.
It's like you're getting a secret decoder ring for all those home design magazines,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Instead of just saying, your kitchen needs X inches of counter space, it's more like, okay, imagine you're juggling a hot pan and a colander full of pasta.
Right,
That's why you need this much space to work comfortably.
precisely. And, that's where these design build firms, they come in.
Yeah, they bring in the reality.
They do. They translate those principles into real-world situations.
I love that.
They show us how those guidelines actually play out in actual homes.
All right, so before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's talk about these NKBA guidelines. Now, those aren't just about aesthetics, are they?
Definitely not. Of course, aesthetics are important, but the NKBA guidelines, they really prioritize function, safety, usability. It's about making sure that your kitchen or your bathroom,
It's got to work for you.
it's not just beautiful, it is a joy to use every single day.
Every single day. Yeah, because you don't want to finish your renovation and be like, why is this faucet so low? Yeah, exactly. And you know what? This is about designing for the long haul, creating spaces that are going to work for you now and in the future. I think it's also really important to remember that these guidelines are different from your building codes.
Oh, that's right.
Building codes are mandatory. Those are safety standards.
Yeah.
And those can actually vary depending on where you live. What's interesting is that the NKBA guidelines build on those codes, but they go a step further.
Interesting.
They start considering ergonomics, how people actually move and interact within a space. And I think that's really cool.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so let's start with kitchen planning, because there was one thing that kind of surprised me in all of this.
What's that?
Doorways.
Oh, yeah.
They placed so much emphasis on doorways.
It's so important. I know it seems like such a small detail, but
Huge.
it can have a major impact on the functionality of your kitchen, for sure. So the NKBA, they're very clear. Aim for a minimum of 32 inches of clear opening for those doorways,
Okay.
with 36 inches actually being ideal.
And, I think what's really interesting is they're actually seeing 36 inches becoming more and more standard.
Really?
Yeah, which is a good thing,
Yeah.
especially if you're trying to future-proof your home.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially if you're planning to age in place or maybe you have mobility issues. That extra width, I can imagine, can make a really big difference if you're trying to maneuver, a big refrigerator or something.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Furniture, appliances, yeah.
Exactly.
And don't forget about the swing direction of the door. You do not want to have your cabinet doors bumping into your entry door every time you turn around.
Nobody wants that.
No, it's so true. So think about, how people are going to move through the space. Try to kind of create a natural flow.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, they also spend a lot of time talking about the work triangle, that kind of mythical relationship between your sink, your
Yeah.
stove, and your refrigerator. So is that still relevant in our modern kitchens?
It really is.
Yeah.
It's a classic design principle for a reason. And it really does work. I mean, the basic idea is that you want to minimize the distance between those 3 points, so your sink, stove, and fridge. And that creates a streamlined, efficient workspace. And actually, the NKBA recommends a total distance of no more than 26 feet between those points.
Oh, wow. Okay, so no more marathon cooking sessions where you're like running across the kitchen
Exactly.
to grab something from the fridge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the total distance. The NKBA also specifies that no single leg of the triangle, so that's the distance between any two of those points, should be less than 4 feet or more than 9.
Okay, so it's like that Goldilocks, not too close, not too far.
Exactly.
Just, But how do you even apply that triangle concept when you've got things like kitchen islands and breakfast bars? Maybe you've even got a wine fridge thrown into the mix.
Right. And that's where it gets really interesting. So that classic triangle, it's a great starting point. But you're right. Modern kitchens often have multiple work zones. You might have an island with a prep sink, or a coffee bar,
Oh, yeah.
a baking center, all of which then need to be factored into the overall flow of the space.
And speaking of flow, they talk a lot about landing spaces, which I'll admit is a concept I really hadn't considered before.
Right. Landing spaces are so crucial. And think of them as designated drop zones
Oh.
for hot pans or heavy platters, or even just a spot to set your groceries down.
Okay, so the NKBA, they recommend a minimum of 24 inches of countertop on one side of the sink and 18 inches on the other. Why is that so important? That seems like a lot of space.
So imagine this. You're at the sink, you're scrubbing away at a pot, suddenly the phone rings. You need a place to safely set that pot down.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're pulling a heavy roasting pan out of the oven.
Yeah.
You don't want to be juggling that over the edge of the counter.
That's a recipe for disaster.
Exactly.
And what about your other appliances? Do they all need their own little landing spaces?
They do. Ovens, microwaves, refrigerators, they all need a landing zone for loading, unloading, and just safely handling those hot items.
Okay, that's smart.
Yeah, for example, the space next to your oven could also serve as the landing zone for your refrigerator if they're near each other. It's all about maximizing your efficiency and just minimizing the risk of spills, burns, kitchen mishaps in general.
Landing spaces. Like the unsung heroes of kitchen design.
They are.
They really are. So what about seating at the counter? Anything surprising there?
Well, the NKBA guidelines, they're big on comfort and clearance. So let's say you have seating at your kitchen island.
Yeah.
Or a breakfast bar. They recommend at least 32 inches of clearance from the counter edge to, the wall or whatever's behind the seating.
Okay.
But that's if nobody's walking behind them.
Oh, okay. So no more feeling like you're crammed into a crowded elevator.
Right. And if you need to, squeeze past someone, that clearance goes up to 36 inches.
Okay.
And for just, regular traffic, behind the chairs, you want at least 44 inches.
That makes sense, yeah. What about knee space? That's got to be a factor too, right?
Oh, absolutely. And of course, the NKBA, they've got guidelines for that too, based on, how high your counter is.
Okay.
So for a standard, 36-inch high counter, you want a minimum of 15 inches of clear knee space per person.
So you can actually pull your chair in.
Exactly.
Okay, good to know. All right, so we got to talk about storage before we move on to bathrooms.
Oh, the eternal struggle.
The eternal struggle. But it's interesting because they call it shelf drawer frontage.
Yes.
Which is essentially like the linear inches of usable storage in your cabinets and your drawers.
Exactly.
So it's not just about volume.
It's not about how much space you have.
Right.
It's about how accessible it is.
Because you could have a ton of cabinets.
Right.
But if it's all crammed into two really deep, dark corners, it's not doing you any good.
Exactly. And they break it down by kitchen size, how much you should have. So for a small kitchen, you're looking at a minimum of 1,300 inches of that shelf drawer frontage.
Wow.
Medium kitchen, 1,700. Large kitchen, 2,000.
Okay, that's a lot of inches.
It is.
And they were saying that storage near the sink, that's prime real estate.
Oh, for sure. I mean, think about it. You're washing dishes, prepping ingredients, just grabbing a sponge. You need those essentials within arm's reach.
Okay, so while we're on the maximizing space train, what about corner cabinets?
Okay, so their recommendation is to incorporate at least one corner cabinet with, a functional storage solution.
Like a lazy Susan.
Exactly. Helps prevent those hard-to-reach corners from becoming a black hole of Tupperware.
Oh, music to my ears. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about bathrooms.
Okay.
So they might not have the work triangle thing going on, but I imagine there's still a lot to consider, right?
There is. And just like in the kitchen, safety is paramount. I mean, you look at the guidelines, they're focusing on things like ceiling heights, clearances around your fixtures, and those slip-resistant surfaces.
So how much headroom are we talking here?
Well, they recommend a minimum ceiling height of 80 inches over fixtures. And, it's not just about avoiding any collisions with the ceiling.
Right.
It's also about creating that sense of spaciousness. And, I think making sure that those low-hanging light fixtures don't become a hazard.
Yeah, nobody wants to bump their head. What about ventilation? Cause bathrooms, they can get...
So important.
Yeah.
So important because you're right, things can get steamy. Proper ventilation is critical. It prevents that mold and mildew buildup. And honestly, that can be a real health hazard.
Yeah, for sure.
The NKBA recommends at least, 50 cubic feet per minute, or CFM, for your bathroom fan, which, by the way, it needs to vent outside.
Oh, okay, so not just recirculating.
No, it's got to go outside.
Okay. You mentioned clearances around fixtures. What are we talking about there?
Okay, so think at least 30 inches of clear floor space around all of your fixtures. That includes the shower entry.
Okay.
Because you want to be able to comfortably stand at the sink, the toilet, get in and out of the shower.
Yeah, especially if you're sharing a bathroom with other people. Speaking of showers, let's talk about those.
Yes.
Because shower size apparently really does matter.
It does. I mean, building codes might have a minimum, but the NKBA really emphasizes that for a comfortable experience. Your shower interior, at least 36 inches by 36 inches.
Okay, so that's a decent amount of space.
Right. So you're not feeling claustrophobic in there.
Right. What other shower-specific guidelines are there?
Well, one thing they emphasize is having your shower controls accessible from both inside and outside the shower.
Oh, smart.
Especially for tub shower combinations.
Yeah.
You don't want to be blasted with cold water when you're just trying to turn the shower on.
Oh, been there.
Yeah.
What about those built-in shower seats I'm seeing everywhere these days?
They're very popular. I think they're great because they provide a place to sit, relax, and they can be so helpful for people with mobility issues. Or, honestly, anybody who enjoys just a nice long shower. The NKBA, they actually recommend a seat height of 17 to 19 inches above the shower floor.
Okay.
But key point is that seat shouldn't compromise your overall shower space.
Yes. Then you're sacrificing space, in one area just to gain it in another. It's not a good use of space.
Exactly. And, while we're talking about showers, safety, grab bars.
Yes.
So important. Now, while they're not technically required by code, the NKBA highly recommends them, especially in showers and around tubs. They provide that extra support and stability, which, as we age, can be so essential for safety.
Yeah, for sure. And those aren't just decorative. They have to be able to stand something.
They need to be sturdy. They actually specify that grab bars should be able to support a static load of 300 pounds.
Wow. Okay, good to know. They're serious about safety.
They are. Another thing, tempered glass.
Yeah.
Shower doors and enclosures.
It's a must, right? Because it breaks into those little not as dangerous pieces.
Safer pieces, exactly. It's one of those things you don't want to skimp on.
All right, safety first in the bathroom. What about storage? Because I feel like you can never have enough storage in the bathroom.
You're telling me. And it's not just about toiletries anymore, right?
Yeah.
It's towels, linens, cleaning supplies. Sometimes even people are keeping small appliances in their bathrooms these days.
Yeah, it's true. And one of the things I thought was they were saying really take an inventory of what you need to store in your bathroom before you even start thinking about cabinets and drawers.
Be realistic about your needs, because are you someone who's a minimalist, just a handful of products? Or do you have a drawer full of serums and moisturizers?
And if you buy your toilet paper in bulk, gotta think about that too.
Exactly. The NKBA, they even talk about mirror placement. They say, mirrors, install them at eye level.
That seems like a no-brainer.
You would think.
I'm sure it is.
But you'd be surprised.
Overlooked. Okay, and I know we're getting into the nitty-gritty here, but you mentioned electrical outlets.
Oh, yes.
Now, those are a must, right? GFCI protection in bathrooms.
Absolutely non-negotiable. And just like in the kitchen, placement matters. The NKBA recommends at least one GFCI outlet within 36 inches of that sink.
Smart.
That way you can plug in your hairdryer, electric razor, you're not running cords across the bathroom.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've covered a lot. Doorways, work triangles, shower seats, GFCI outlets.
It's a lot.
It's a lot to think about, right? So it's clear that designing a functional and a safe kitchen or bathroom, it goes way beyond just picking, pretty finishes.
It really does.
Yeah.
Because it's about understanding how you use these spaces on a daily basis and making design choices that actually support those activities.
Right.
And, these guidelines, they're an excellent framework, but it's important to remember that they're not one size fits all.
That's the thing, right? We can get so caught up in the how-to that we forget about the who.
Exactly.
Who are we designing this for? It's got to reflect you, these rooms, your personality, and how you live. One of the design build firms even said kitchens and bathrooms are the most emotional rooms in a house.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Who knew?
I know.
Well, think about it. It's where we're celebrating, unwinding after a long day, maybe having a few meltdowns along the way.
That's where it happens. That's why, understanding your needs, your habits, that's so important.
Yeah.
And these sources really emphasize this. It's not just how many people use the space, but how they use it.
Oh, yeah. Give me an example.
Okay, so those shower seats, right?
Mm-hmm.
For someone with mobility issues, that's a necessity. But for a family with teenagers who take hour-long showers,
Oh, yeah.
that seat might be the key to morning peace.
Because someone can actually brush their teeth while the shower's running.
Exactly.
And I bet that's why, even those minimum shower dimensions, those are so important, right?
Because a 36 by 36 shower, that's not just about fitting, it's about not feeling claustrophobic when someone's in there hogging the hot water.
Exactly. Think about even your cooking style.
Oh, yeah.
If you're someone who loves elaborate meals, baking extravaganza, you want the huge kitchen island, the extra oven, it's going to spark joy.
Every time.
But if you're more of a takeout and microwave kind of person, that level of culinary grandeur?
Overkill.
Totally overkill. So it's about, really being honest with yourself. Right? About how you live.
Yeah.
And then letting that guide your choices. Even if it means,
straying from the guidelines.
Yeah. Maybe just a little bit.
So the guidelines, they're a great foundation, but they can't predict, your love of vintage tile or that you really need a dedicated coffee bar.
Exactly. And this is where I think having a good designer, it can be invaluable.
It can make a big difference.
Because they can help you blend those practicalities with your own personal style.
Yeah.
And create a space that's uniquely you.
And hopefully help you avoid those, what was I thinking, moments down the line.
That's what you want to avoid.
Because let's face it, renovation's not cheap.
No, they're an investment. And that's where, that designer's expertise, it really comes in. They can help you avoid those costly mistakes. They can source materials well and just really help you make design choices that are going to stand the test of time.
So as you're embarking on this design journey, remember those NKBA guidelines, they're a trusty sidekick.
That's a great way to put it.
Not the ultimate rule book.
Yeah.
Embrace your own personal style. Consider the feeling you want to create in your space, and don't be afraid to call in the reinforcements when you need them.
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, it's about creating that space that reflects you.
How you live, how you want to live, space that feels like home.
Yes.
And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder those possibilities.